unless you are in 2009 buying Bitcoin for 30 cents, ain't going to happen anymore. Unless you're that guy, no one's getting rich on $2,000. No one's getting rich on 10 grand. Really, no one's getting rich on 100 grand.
I would love to hear what your advice would be, or actually what kind of features you would include in a course for 17 to 18-year-olds if there was a course on building personal wealth, building towards financial independence in life. What would be some of the critical features of that course?
It's really, it's a really hard subject that I care a lot about, because it's in some ways it's super simple. In some ways it's really complex. And so like, it's hard because there's some people that I'm thinking of that I'd be like, oh, this is how I talk to you about this. And then for many others, I would say, we're not talking about that at all. We're just going to focus on these things. Right. And so I think wealth gets people excited, but what it really is personal finance. And that's what people need. That is the requisite step. That is the arithmetic before the multiplication, right? Like we have to learn how to add and subtract before we can start doing multiplication. And so it kind of functions like that with personal finance. Like if you can't save money, you can't invest and become wealthy. And people don't know how to save money and are trying to invest and become wealthy when they're broke as fuck. Sorry, broke as darn. It's putting the cart before the horse. And I'll tell you a quick story that maybe will drive this point home. I got a DM from an 18-year-old kid, and he said, hey, I'd love some investing advice. I've got $2,000 saved up. It's making me $100 a month, which I have no idea how he's getting 100% returns or whatever the hell it is. I'm sure it's some crypto nonsense. But the point is he's like, I want some investing advice. And the thing is we're doing things out of sequence, right? No one, unless you are in 2009 buying Bitcoin for 30 cents, ain't going to happen anymore. Unless you're that guy, no one's getting rich on $2,000. No one's getting rich on 10 grand. Really, no one's getting rich on 100 grand. So that investment, in my opinion, should be in skills. If you empty your purse into your mind, no one can take it from you. It's a paraphrasing of a Ben Franklin quote, who was the president of the United States for your Australian audience. All right. And generally smart dude. Anyways. Step one is personal finance. Is most people far, far, far overextend themselves. They get credit cards, they get in debt, and it's just this consumerism that just is so stupid because they're flexing for people to pretend like they're successful. It's just the dumbest thing in the world. And so I guess the question for most people is like, the adding and subtracting of personal finance is simple. The question is, why aren't you doing it? Right. And so then you have to face the real things, which is like, I'm wildly insecure. I care about what everyone else thinks. I would rather, like, I'll ask you this question and everyone can think about this for themselves. Would you rather everyone think you were wealthy, but actually be poor, or have everyone think you are poor and actually be wealthy? And I think the root of that answer will tell you whether or not you will be wealthy. Until you solve that question the right way, until you truly internalize that, and you decide, I would rather feed my family without anxiety. I would rather have a wife who is supported. I would rather own my home in cash. I would rather drive a used car, my pretty much most of my adult life, until my income far exceeds, what I would ever pay. And I continue to reinvest all of the excess cash that I have, because I don't spend it on stupid stuff, into my brain, into more skills. If you can play that game, you'll win. And I'll just tell one quick story, which is, like, in the beginning, I slept on the floor of my gym for 9 months when I started my first business because I couldn't afford 2 rents. So it's $5,000 a month, and I had $5,000 total. So, like, I didn't know what I was going to do. I remember doing $5,000 in sales the first month, and then watching the rent check go out and having it go back down to zero and being like, shit, what am I going to do? I was able to the next month do $10,000 and I kept 5. The next month I made $15,000, I kept 10. The next month I made $20,000, kept 15. And I did that all the way up to $35,000 a month. That whole time, I still slept on the floor. And so I think, and like, I showed up to my first ever like event that I held for the gym owners, And I had this girl, and I drove up in a used Prius that we own in cash with a dent on the side and a cracked windshield. And we pulled up to the event, and some of the clients who were paying us a lot of money to be there, they were paying $40,000 a year, right? So I'm driving a car that's $5,000. And I show up, and this woman, Monica Batar, she says, I thought you were supposed to be rich. And I said, you should see my bank account. And I was a millionaire at the time. And so I share that story because people sometimes see how we live now. But proportionally to my income, I live on less than 2% of what I make. And so even if I spend $20,000 a month, $50,000 a month, it makes no difference to my anything. And it looks crazy though, like flying in private jets and all of this stuff. But that's not don't look at what people do now and try and emulate that. Those are not the successful actions. The successful actions were eating shit for a long time, far, 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 living far below my means for a very, very long period of time, dumping all of my excess cash into my brain so that I could develop skills so that someday I wouldn't have to save as much I wouldn't have to skimp on my savings because my cash flow so far exceeded it. And I didn't start actually spending more than $9,000 a month. And that may sound like a lot, I get it. But when we started spending more than $9,000 a month, I was taking home over $1.5 million a month. I lived on an apartment that cost me $1,200 a month when I was taking home $1 million a month.
Wow.
A 1-bedroom. And so I think this is the piece that is lost, in the Instagram culture.
Humble beginnings.
You were humble throughout, Yeah. I'm just saying it for context. It's we just don't get ahead of ourselves. Just the investment should be in your brain. It's not that's not just an aphorism. It's if you get smarter, you get the skills, you'll make the money, right? Thinking that you're going to hit it big on the next Bitcoin. It's such a crapshoot. You're not going to be lucky. You're just going to lose. That's all. The statistics are far in your favor that you're just buying lottery tickets rather than buying the sure thing, which is that if you increase the value of yourself, you will always be able to make more money than you need.